Alright, here we go. I think it's time I should at least talk about how to set up the field. And this will probably be a two-parter, but for now, let me just cover the basics. This is not a very interesting topic or not a fun screen to work with, but everybody needs to know, and people do ask me about it. On the options, first let me point out animation options. And the reason I bring it up is this is where you set your default step size to 22.5. If you want to change this for some reason, you can change it. Your maximum step size. This is what makes the path turn red. You know that you have paths that follow from one maneuver to the next, and we've talked about how they turn red if they get too long. That's if the step exceeds this length. You can change this number too, but your default step size is here. The reason I bring it up is we're going to talk about the field options. Now, you can set your height, your width. You just type in here if you want to change this. The border, what is this for? Let me first explain that we have inches, steps, feet, yards, and meters. In other words, this is expressed in inches. All of these numbers you see are all in inches. If we change this to yards, now the numbers change because now they're all in yards. Now we have 100 yards long, 53 1/3 high. The top border is 2. If you change the top border, let's say we change it to 6 and say OK, we always get a warning here, and the warning is about our step instructions. I'll explain what that means later on, but you're going to generate printed step instructions for your people, and this is the reference points, so you get that warning. You notice what happened here? This is your border. This is a side border, this is a top border, this is a border. This is when you hit the equal sign and you go to a normal view. Say you were zoomed in like this. We can zoom in by pressing a plus. If you hit the equal sign, this is the normal zoomed out position for your field. And the top border now is 6 because we changed it. So options field, that's what the top border is for. We can actually make it 10. Go to yards, make it 10, make the side border 10, 10. Now we have a bigger border left on the edge. So you can make this however big you want to make it. But that's what the border is for. Notice this always goes back to inches. If you don't want it in inches, just click feet, click yards, click steps. The numbers are all changed. If you click steps, and this is why I brought up the step size, this is in units of 22.5. If you don't like 22.5, you go to animation options that I just showed, and you can change that. Now I'm going to explain about, oh, by the way, border thickness 1, you set it to 4 or anything you want, you just type in there. Now you have a fat border around your field, so you can change that too. It's just something you can change. Let's change it to a 2 because the 4 is kind of obnoxious. Now it's a 2. The point is you can change it. Let me just, not to talk about step instructions a lot, but let me just talk about how to change these numbers at the bottom if you don't like the color. You go to options, step instructions. I'll explain on another lesson what all this stuff is for, but the point is label color, change it from red to blue, whatever color you want. You can actually change the font, make it bigger, smaller. You can choose a font over here. Now we change these labels down here, and that's where you change them, and I'll explain why they're on step instructions on a later date. But let me get back to the field options. These are presets, and if you click one of these radio buttons here, let's just say we click indoor percussion. When I clicked indoor percussion, all these numbers change because you're changing the dimensions of the field. You click this, it changes the dimensions. You see things happening over here as it's changing numbers when you check these. The idea that if you check these, you change it to a preset which is an often used size. It might not be the size you want, but you can again type the field in here. So I changed this to indoor guard 70 by 50. Maybe you like to use 75, so you just type in 75. Now it's 75 by 50. It's whatever you typed in. I wanted to explain about regulation and ideal. This regulation football field is the actual size the sport is played on. So I just changed that, changed all these values over here automatically just by clicking on regulation. Sets this up for you. This is what it looks like. The reason you have an ideal, the ideal football field, some marching people like to use this. If you're setting up marching band, people like to use an ideal length sometimes. It's not the regulation for the sport of football. So why do people use it? Because it's exactly 84 steps. So in yards, it's not 53 1/3 anymore. Now it's 52 1/2. But some people like to use that. The point is, you have two presets for a football field. If you don't like either one of them, it doesn't matter. You can type whatever you want in here. If you want to make it 56 for some reason, you could. And now it's 56. So you can make it whatever you want. Now I should explain about the lines. This visible just means you can see the line. So let's just uncheck everything and start with something really simple. In fact, let's go back to regulation football field. Let's start with nothing just to show how this works. We're going to uncheck everything. The weight, by the way, is the thickness of the line. So let's say we have a vertical line, and all these repeat, by the way. It has to be visible. You have to check visible or you won't see it. Let's say we're working in yards, 10 yards. Let's say the color is green. It's a solid line, so we won't make it dashed or dotted. And its weight is 1. And then we hit OK. Now we have one kind of a line. It repeats. It's green. Its weight is 1. And it's not dotted or dashed. So let's say you want another line. It's also vertical. It's also visible. This switches back to inches. So if you want yards, check yards. Let's make this one every 5 yards. Let's make its color. Let's just make it gray. Let's make it a dotted line. But let's say this one is 2. Let's say it's 3. So it's a fatter line. Okay. Now you have two kinds of lines. You have a green line every 10 yards, but every 5 yards you have a gray fat line. Let's change this just a little bit more so it makes more sense. Let's change this back to 1. This is our gray line. It's every 5 yards. It's dotted. It's visible. This one's every 10 yards. Let's make it black. That's its color now. And let's make it 2 wide. Now you see a little more sensible arrangement where you have this fat black line every 10. You have a dotted gray line every 5. The dotted gray line is hidden by the black line. So I should explain on field options about this vertical. These are both vertical. What if you want a horizontal line? Well, you make it visible, but it's not checked here, so it's horizontal. And let's just make it every 10. And let's say we make it orange. And let's say we make it 2 is a good thickness, so we'll just stay with that. And we'll make it a dashed line. And I did something wrong there. What did I do? Oh, I didn't check my yards. So again, your spacing on this should be 10 yards. Its color is orange. Now this is more what I meant. So now you have the same horizontal lines as before, but we've added a vertical line. We have the same vertical lines as before, but we've added a horizontal line that's orange. Only one more thing I want to explain here on this part. We'll cover many more things later, but on the hash marks, by the way, works the same way. You check this if you want it visible. You get up to 4 kinds. The weight is again the thickness. So if you wanted to make these really thick, you change that to 6. Now you have big fat hash marks here. Let's go on and make these the same color. So let's make them both green. And let's make them both the same. So we'll change the weight is the thickness again. The length, by the way, well, let's express this in feet. These are 2 feet wide. Let's make them 4 feet wide. So you just type a 4 in here. And then you will want them to repeat. Let's just show what would happen if they did not repeat. By the way, this is vertical and horizontal. So these are 60 in feet. Horizontal is 15, 99 and 15. Those are the coordinates. So now you have your coordinates here. And the 2 hash marks we define, but they're not repeating. So let's again talk about where we want them to be in feet. Instead of just having one at 15 feet, let's make it every 15 feet. So repeat is horizontally, by the way. So if you have the horizontal is 15 feet, it's going to repeat that amount. So if you want the hashes every 15 feet, this is what you get. And sure enough, this is where they are now. So that's how you set up your hashes. And that's probably enough about field options for now. The point about hash marks is you can have a repeating hash mark, which is what you want most of the time. This works hand in hand with step instructions, and we'll cover step instructions, and we'll sort of revisit how some of this stuff works, but at least I've covered some of the basics and the options you have for setting these up.